So, here we are at Dead or Alive 4. Since the release of Dead or Alive 3, with the release of the volleyball games, Dead or Alive was kind of in a weird place. The view of this game was kind of skewed. A lot of people didn't know what to expect from a Dead or Alive game at this point. Albeit with the skewed perception of the game, this game saw a lot of popularity, especially seeing as it released very early on the Xbox 360's life, and was one of the only fighters available at the time. Like Dead or Alive 3 before, this game was an Xbox exclusive, releasing only on the Xbox 360. Despite the perception of the series by outsiders, Dead or Alive 4 was the only game in the series to make it to the esports competition, something they haven't been able to do since, and not from lack of trying. This game also, unfortunately, is the last game that has any involvement with the series creator, Itagaki, as he left Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja after this game. Unfortunately, while I was writing the script for this video, Tomonobu Itagaki unfortunately passed away at the age of 58. I usually focus more on the lore of the in-game world, but Itagaki was so intertwined with the series that I have to mention his passing. A true visionary, and I wouldn't be playing these games if it wasn't for him. And honestly, it feels like this is the video to mention it, seeing as Dead or Alive 4 was the last Dead or Alive game that he worked on, before behind the scenes arguments led to him leaving the company. Dead or Alive 4 is another fan favourite, but for much more different reasons than the previous games. But, is that enough to make it stand out? I'm Budget Disney Princess, and this is my Dead or Alive 4 retrospective. Dead or Alive 4 was a launch title for the Xbox 360. Despite being such an early game, the graphics still hold up pretty well. Even looking at this game for the first time, it's clear to see the game has surpassed a lot of the visual fidelity of the previous games. The environments are much more detailed, the models have gotten a fresh coat of paint for the first time in a while. Generally, there's just so much more going on now with the much more advanced hardware. Even the fluidity of the reversals looks much more natural, as characters do much less of snapping into place and have a lot more fluid reactions. One thing that I think can be seen that adds a lot more to the game is the fact that the weather looks much more detailed here, along with the textures and shadows. Even the reflections are now noticeable here. The locations of the older games, while having settings occasionally outside, every once in a while of an Asian aesthetic, it primarily takes place with those Asian influenced areas. Dead or Alive 4 seems to take a lot of inspiration from Western influences. The game has Eastern influences, of course, sure, like Kyoto and Bloom, but stages like Gambler's Paradise and the Seaside Market have a heavy Western influence. It also debuted one of the stranger stages with the Experimental Playground, which seems to have taken some heavy inspiration from Jurassic Park. And not just the environment, this also includes the dinosaurs. So yes, dinosaurs are canon to the Dead or Alive universe, and if you think the game offers any explanation for this, no. Characters are not surprised one bit to see a pterodactyl, so I guess it's just a regular occurrence here. I actually think there's some comparison or inspiration to be derived from this stage, being that both Jurassic Park and Dead or Alive have had heavy influence in cloning in their plotlines, so maybe that's why the dinosaurs are there, or maybe I'm just overthinking it. At least they didn't take it too far by, I don't know, having the dinosaur wear boxing gloves or something. Thankfully, the game brings back the realism by having a space station to fight on based directly on the Halo series. Dead or Alive 4 has some amazing new characters that it introduced. Elliot, Genfu's protege, makes his start here. He is very similar to Genfu, with a bit more speed and less combo throws. He is also the youngest Dead or Alive fighter to be introduced at age 16. Kokoro, another amazing character, uses Bajin Quan, a switch-up character who switches between highs and lows as she attacks. Kokoro is also pretty strong with her reversals and has some good combo throws. However, the grab for her throws are short range, so can be a risk. Now Mariposa, who actually made her debut in one of the volleyball games, is an incredible new character. She's a scientist working behind the scenes and was the head researcher behind the Alpha and Ein project. When she's not doing that, she's working as a professional wrestler. You may think another pro wrestler would be kind of redundant at this stage, but Lara Mariposa plays a lot different than Tina or Base. Instead of being based on American wrestling, her fighting style takes a lot of inspiration from luchadors, with speedy flips that send her airborne a lot, mixing her high-flying combos with devastating throws. And last but definitely not least, the first guest character of Dead or Alive, Nicole, also known as Spartan 458. Nicole is a guest character from the popular Halo series, one of the perks of being an Xbox exclusive. Nicole isn't one of the main characters or appear in the series, but her appearance here doesn't counteract with already established lore. Does this mean that Dead or Alive takes place in the same continuity as Halo? I'd say yes. The game takes place directly after the events of Dead or Alive 3. After Ayane is defeated for her adoptive father, Hayate and Ayane return home, with Hayate finally taking his place as the head of the Mugen Tenshin clan. Fearing that Mist will be planning to oppose them soon, he decides it's time to go on the offensive and get rid of any loose ends that are still hanging over their heads from Dootech. It's not too long until they find Kasumi and get her to join the team. She also fears Mist is far from done with her clan. Kasumi has changed an awful lot after the constant years of fighting. She's extremely tired of it, however, due to her DNA being the basis for the clones, Kasumi feels like getting rid of the clones is her responsibility, but little does she know Kasumi Alpha is about to reach the next evolutionary stage in Alpha 152. Zack also has his most prominent role in the main story, as he's decided to climb a building. Why? Well, why not? And thankfully this will actually come into play later. While there's a story for all characters, with cutscenes, honestly, a lot of it does nothing to drive the main plot. Lei Feng and Hitomi canonically meet for the first time and fight over a massive melon. Bei sees Tina on the TV and throws a hissy fit, destroying property before attacking Brad Wong, who's passing by, so he's not all bad. Helena Douglas is now in the warpath as she's sick of being used by Mist and starts the Dead or Alive 4 tournament to bring all the players out into the open. The characters rush back and forth slapping each other as usual until it all comes to the final end. Ryu and Hayate meet the mysterious La Mariposa, the luchador wrestler who bears a striking resemblance to Lisa the scientist. She was secretly the head scientist behind Project Alpha, Ein and Omega, but it's hard to tell, that mask is very secretive. Lisa immediately has a change of heart and decides to join the good side with very little push. Meanwhile, Helena meets Christy, the assassin she previously had as her assistant, who finally reveals the truth. It was Christy who had game-ended her mom, and Helena doesn't take that news well and beats the crap out of her. Smart move. Christy, for being a genius assassin, she doesn't know really when to shut up. Feeling that her journey is complete, Helena hatches a plan to end Dotek's reign once and for all. Kasumi rushes down underneath a hidden base located underneath Dotek to confront Alpha 152, but while she's winning the battle and about to finish 152, a large explosion begins to occur, and in the ensuing explosion, 152 manages to escape. This is because Helena has decided she's taken Dotek out even if it means at the loss of her own life, but as she walks into the fire preparing to meet her fate, something happens. Remember Zack, who I mentioned earlier was climbing the tower for funsies? Well, he managed to do it, and Zack grabs her just in time to save her from the explosion. Yes, Zack pulled a pretty cool hero move. With Dotek headquarters crippled, Mist's research base destroyed, it's a huge win for the hero side. Sure, Victor Donovan is still out there, and so is Alpha 152, but hey, this is still a big win for the heroes. The game ends on a positive note. Although knowing that their journey is far from over, they at least take a break before they have to fight again. Such is the fate of a ninja. I've said multiple times that every Dead or Alive game, bar 3, has something that makes it stand on its own, and this is exactly where I think Dead or Alive 4 shines. Moves have been added into pre-existing characters like Kasumi, having new moves that utilise her teleporting more. Tina has been given a lot more throws to add much more variety to her combos and switch chops. A lot of these are minor tweaks to the character's moveset, but all these minor tweaks add up, and the moves given to pre-existing characters help bring them on par with the newer characters that have been introduced. Whether this was just luck or painstaking design, it ends up with what I would consider the most balanced roster by far in any of the Dead or Alive games. I do think this is one of the reasons why this game is by and far remembered as the competitive Dead or Alive. Any character you pick up plays different but are all equal in their fighting style. All this while keeping the counter rhythm the exact same here and the stage transitions as in the last games. It's clearly evident why this is the game that made it onto the competitive fighting game scene. And while Dead or Alive could be played online in the older games, when the 360 released, this was now becoming the standard for people to have in their home, rather than only a select few people being able to afford the online functionality in the Xbox Live's beginning. Even offline, however, these improvements were a necessity. What some consider Dead or Alive 4's greatest flaw is something I consider one of its greatest strengths: the difficulty. The game really upped the difficulty to another level. You won't get by in this game by just button mashing, as the AI in this game has a much better memory. Keep jumping in for higher attacks and your opponent will quickly catch on to your spamming, meaning you'll have to switch up at some stage. This makes every match much more difficult than previous entries. And while the opponents are difficult, the game's final boss is remembered in infamy. Unlike Omega before, which was very underwhelming, Alpha is completely the opposite. Alpha as a final boss is remembered in the Dead or Alive community primarily for her brutality. She has combos and moves that can ultimately devastate your health bar in a couple of hits, along with that gosh darn teleport. She can fly around the room, add an extra layer of caution, and although sometimes it corners the line between challenging and unfair, it's doable. And even if you do find it too challenging, at least you can lower the difficulty to easy. Wait, they actually removed the easy difficulty. Well, I guess just get good then. Now, let's get down to the unlockables. This game isn't up to the level of Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate, but compared to Dead or Alive 3, this is one hell of an improvement. Costumes are back to being unlocked by defeating arcade mode and time attack mode, with much more variety this time. A good mix of classics and new costumes are always very much appreciated. And the great thing about the costumes here is that this was so early in the Xbox's life, all the costumes are on the disc, as downloadable content wasn't really a big thing yet. You know, if this game had come out like maybe 2 years after, they'd been milking the costumes dry with this downloadable content. The endings are back and function the exact same way as they did in Dead or Alive 3. You unlock an ending for a character when you defeat the story mode. Unfortunately, I would be lying if I didn't say these endings were a huge step down. Dead or Alive's identity was in a strange place at this point. The Venus Vacation games were probably just as identifiable as the main series, probably even more noticeable as the reputation of the Venus Vacation series had garnered a bit of a reputation, not all of it positive, and the game itself embraced a slighter tone, especially in the endings. Instead of having endings like Hitomi doing her karate, or Lei Fang showing off her heroics, you get a joke about her being groped, or Hitomi running around her apartment to get ready for visitors. Even Kasumi's ending, which was pretty awesome in the other game, is her floating around as a mermaid. There is some good endings. The newcomers Elliot and Kokoro get good ones. Helena, Hayate and Ryu also. However, a lot of the side characters get no advancement to their stories, and you may think, who really cares? But if you're like me whose main is Hitomi and want to see something interesting happen, it feels like kind of a letdown, especially compared to how well a lot of these characters were treated in Dead or Alive 3. The costumes are a massive step up from the ones in Dead or Alive 3, with the dudes having 1 or 2 extra costumes on average and the ladies having on average 3 or 4. And the methods of unlocking these costumes are back to normal, thank goodness. Defeating the story mode with these characters and the time attack mode for the secret characters is how to unlock them, and that's where a lot of the replayability comes in. There are stages to unlock, but most importantly there's unlockable characters. Genfu, Helena, Leon are unlockable characters, with Spartan 458 named Nicole, and there's even a secret character with Tengu returning. This was one of the last games before DLC sort of ruined fighting games by not allowing them to really have big unlockables anymore. This game is a huge step up and really feels like the end of an era for fighting games like this. Dead or Alive 4 is a fantastic game and the most balanced fighter in the series by far, that made all the little tweaks in just the right places to provide a new strategy to a pre-existing formula. Adding in new characters and enhancing the older ones to provide much more moves to help them keep up with the new contenders allowed an already fast-paced game to become even faster. A game stacked with unlockables and replayability built onto solid fundamentals, this game is the pinnacle of the end of an era, where all the quality is located right here on this disc. Dead or Alive 4 has a unique feel to the Dead or Alive games, and although later games add in much more content and balance patches and all that jazz, I still consider Dead or Alive 4 the straight purest fighter in the series. Dead or Alive 4 feels like the definitive end to the original series, and its layout. But as we know, they continued, and is that a good or a bad thing? Well, we're just gonna have to wait and see.